Like a backstage pass to the world of fly fishing travel, this is Waypoints, the podcast of destination angling. News and events, helpful travel tips, destination profiles, great stories, and expert advice from some of the most seasoned and experienced names in fishing travel. Waypoints is presented by Yellow Dog Fly Fishing, the industry's #1 specialty travel company and the fly shop for the world of fly fishing. Freshwater or saltwater, international or domestic, Yellow Dog has you covered for your next fishing adventure. And now your host, author, photographer, and world traveler, Jim Klug.
For more than 4 decades, Jeff Currier has traveled the globe with a fly rod in hand, fishing waters on 6 continents and pursuing the types of species that most anglers have never even heard of. He's made a career out of being a professional fly fisherman and a world traveler, lecturing, teaching courses, writing books, painting fish, and appearing in films. And through his decades of work, he has inspired generations of traveling anglers, becoming one of the most known names in destination fly fishing. Throughout Jeff's unique and unusual career, one number has quietly driven him forward as he's traveled to new waters. The number 500, which is what this episode of Waypoints is going to focus on. This episode is being recorded on location in France, specifically in the Saône-du-Bresse region of eastern France in the heart of Burgundy, based out of a tiny town called Verdun-Ciel. When we arrived here in France, Jeff was sitting at 499 documented fly-caught species, and he's here in search of number 500. Well, there's no way to confirm this. If Jeff is successful, it will likely make him the first angler ever to reach this 500 species milestone on a fly rod. And for this milestone, Jeff has decided to focus on one of the most unusual fish of his career, a giant species that is rarely caught on a fly and one that few people have even heard of. So this episode with Jeff is all about obsession, curiosity, exploration, and the idea that a lifetime of fly fishing can still culminate in one audacious goal. And of course, an accomplishment that can best be described as a once-in-a-generation milestone. The Waypoints podcast is brought to you by Patagonia. To bring their gear to life, Patagonia is motivated by relentless curiosity and a passion for the wild. They evaluate hundreds of materials, build dozens of prototypes, and spend seasons punishing them in the world's most extreme conditions. The work is the guide, and Patagonia never tires of exploring, learning, and improving. The all-new River Salt 2 wading boot is an incredible product that solves key issues for anglers in both salt and freshwater environments. These new boots are lightweight, fast-drying, and built to perform across a full range of conditions, from mountain streams to tropical flats. Best of all, they are designed for speed, so you can slip them on and have them laced and ready to go in seconds. They combined abrasion-resistant Cordura nylon mesh uppers with a Vibram Mega Grip sole for reliable traction on wet and dry surfaces. The result is a single boot that reliably performs in any scenario. Available now through Yellow Dog Fly Fishing and Patagonia, the new River Salt 2 wading boot. Jeff Currier, welcome back to Waypoints. Good to have you on the show again.
Hey, Klug, it's good to be back, man. We're in a cool place, man.
Well, in the intro, I explained that we're here in France, in the French countryside. I talked about the region and the small town we're staying in, but start off by describing where we are and where exactly we're recording this. There's going to be a lot of ambient and background noise, so I want listeners to have a sense of where we are right now as we're having this conversation.
Well, we're in an echoey room in a hotel that's 400 years old. I mean, this place was built in the 1600s, which is always the cool thing about Europe. Everywhere you go, it's just, everything's old. It's pretty neat. I like that. Right across the street from us, which, by the way, the street is nuts. There's a detour in town, and there's trucks whizzing by and cars, and then all of a sudden a tractor comes by pulling grain. I mean, it's crazy. And then we got this stray cat that sits out front. I don't know how it has not gotten squashed, but it does cross the street constantly because when we leave in the boat in the morning, there it is on the dock, looking for a handout. It's pretty cool. But there's the river over there. this is a confluence of two major rivers, the Doubs and the Saone. And we're just upstream from where the Doubs runs in, and this is where we've been fishing the last week. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful, but good God, it's hot. We've hit the tough week.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit more about that because it is hot. We are in this just kind of thriving, tiny village, small town in the French countryside. As Jeff said, there's a lot happening around us. You're going to hear some background noise. We're about 20 feet away, right across the street from a very, very old church. A lot of church bells are ringing. And so if you're wondering what's going on in the background, picture the small French village in which we've been posted up for the last week. Well, Jeff, most people in the industry, as well as kind of the general fly fishing public, both people that work in the industry and the public, kind of know you as the guy chasing different species with a fly rod. But before that, and before there were hundreds of fish on your personal list, what was Jeff Currier known for back in the day?
Oh, I would say back in the day, maybe we're talking like high school or, childhood. I was the guy that was drawing on the desk, doing detentions for, decorating the desk because I was bored to death with social studies and language arts and all that crap that they feed you when you're a kid. And then when we had study hall, a lot of times I'd hop on my bike and sneak off to a nearby stream and go fishing. So I was known as the guy that did some cool art and always went fishing.
What were you drawing on the desks? Was it like super bad type stuff, or were you the movie, or was it more like fish art?
It was not fish art. It was, that was the day and age when Star Wars came out. So it was probably spaceships and aliens and creepy faces.
All right.
I'm sure my principal thought I was demented, but it worked out okay.
Well, and then when you were a young man, you were growing up in New Hampshire and Massachusetts primarily, kind of back and forth. And even when you first started out as a fly angler, as that kid that would sneak off on his bike to find nearby water, did you ever imagine that fly fishing would become your career as well as kind of your passport to the world?
Absolutely not. It was not really an option. I mean, I don't think we, in our day and age, thought of fishing as a career unless you were, watching the American Sportsman and saw Kurt Gowdy or maybe got a Lee Wolf clip here and there. Which is interesting because my grandfather, my mother's father, actually owned a outdoor store, and he had a really nice Orvis section in the store back in the 40s and 50s. But still, my dad was an office boy. He actually grew up a fisherman, a great fly fisherman, and, did a lot of hunting. But when he had a family, he buckled down, and he was, worked hard, and he expected me to go to college and become an office boy as well.
But you grew up in a fishing family and a fishing culture.
Yeah,
no doubt.
Big time, both sides of the family.
Yeah, looking back, what were the biggest turning points that shaped your life in fishing?
Well, there was some epic moments as a kid fishing. Number one, the first time I ever went fishing was opening day on the Switch River in Massachusetts. And, I remember sleeping by the fireplace back in the day. It was probably an April day. And I remember my mother specifically saying the night before, he's never going to get up. He's a 5-year-old. He's not going to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning or 4, whatever it was. And I remember my dad coming out to wake me up, and I was already sitting up ready to go. And that was kind of the beginning of it. And we had an amazing morning. My dad fly fished. He threw a night crawler out for me. He caught 9 fish. I'll never forget. I caught 2. And I wasn't ticked off about that. I was ticked off the fact that he was fly fishing and I wasn't, because it looked a lot more fun.
And you were 5.
Yeah, I was 5.
Yeah.
And he rewarded me, a couple years later, got my first fly rod for Christmas when I was, 6 or 7, and, put that thing to work. But there was another moment that was amazing too. I was probably 7 or 8 at that time, and my dad caught a 7-pound smallmouth bass. And I was on board for that. And it was a fish that, I know he was after a long time, and he finally got it. And I remember when it landed on the bottom of the rowboat, it almost flipped out, and he put his foot down so quick to jump on this fish that he put a leak in the bottom of the boat, and we had to go to shore. And needless to say, the bass sat in our freezer for 15, 20 years. He was always planning on getting it mounted, but he could never afford to do so. But we'd always pull it out once in a while and look at it and be like, what a great memory. And that put me over the top.
Right on. Well, one thing that I kind of failed to mention in the beginning, in the intro, but I wanted to give listeners some background and transparency as you and I talk today, is that We've known each other for about 30 years. We've worked together quite a bit, certainly for the past 20 years or so on all sorts of film projects, including numerous projects with Confluence Films, several field reports and adventures through Yellow Dog. You are also a Yellow Dog travel ambassador, where you host numerous trips to all sorts of far-off places each year with the company and with your longtime clients. So I want to make sure that people understand that relationship and that we have known each other and worked together for so many years, because I think that's important as I ask you these questions. I didn't just meet you. We've got some background on this stuff, which is, I think, worth mentioning. But, you talked about being a kid and some of the transformative moments for you in fly fishing. Fast forward to your profession. Now, all these years later, you've been in the industry for decades, right? I mean, literally since kind of a teenager and in college, working at a fly shop, and then being out in the West in Jackson for, 30 years in Jackson?
I was in Jackson 34 years.
34 years.
That's counting Victor, but
Yeah.
Long time.
Working in the industry the entire time you were there.
That's right.
How, Jeff, has fly fishing changed over that time, over the past few decades where you've been working in the industry? Would you say for the better and for the worse?
I would say, well, obviously it's grown like crazy. When I walked into I worked at the Jack Dennis Fly Shop, which is on the main square in Jacksonville, Wyoming. It was an outdoor store, and the fly shop was in the back. It was, a big deal because it was Jack Dennis. He's a well-known fly fisherman, a great fly tire. So people that fly fished came to that store just to set foot in it and fish in Jackson Hole. But it was a small group, We didn't get, tens of thousands of people that came to fly fish. It was, an elite group that came through, and it was really nice. You'd go out in the rivers after work, and you might see, one or two of the people you saw, during the week that came in the shop, but, definitely not hundreds. You had water all to yourself. Now, jumping ahead 40 years later, the sport is still great. I think it's evolved a lot. I mean, we have way more people into fly fishing, which we also have more women involved, which is wonderful. And when you have a lot of people that love a sport, especially that involves the outdoors, there's more people to protect it. So that's an advantage. At the same time, the question I have to field more than any other question now is, how did you leave Jacksonville, Wyoming to go to Wisconsin? And anytime you're in, no matter how great a place it is, change is good. And I was ready for a change. But also, I watched a lot of my favorite waters. I don't go out to fish to catch fish. Maybe I did when I was in my teens and my 20s, definitely when I was a kid. But now I go out to, enjoy the outdoors. I want to hear the birds. I want to, hang out with a close friend or my wife and just them. And it's, it's not always that way anymore. You got to work a little harder to get to those places.
It's kind of a common theme on this show is you don't just go out to catch fish. It's really about where you find yourself, the places it takes you, who you're with. We hear that a lot with all our different guests, no doubt about it. And it's worth mentioning that you talked about moving from Jackson to Wisconsin. After 34 years in the Jackson area, you and your wife packed up and moved to Wisconsin about, 3 years ago?
Time's flying. It'll be, this is our 5th summer there this year.
5 years.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
It is mind-blowing.
You are now a resident of the great state of Wisconsin.
It's pretty awesome. But a lot of people don't realize I have some roots there. No, I wasn't born there. I came from New England, but I went to college in Ashland, Wisconsin at Northland College to study biology. That was a little over my head when it came to calculus. So I graduated as a naturalist. I kept lowering my what I need to take for courses so I could fish more. But I graduated there, and to be honest with you, had I not planned on becoming a trout bum when I was like 9 years old, because I was fortunate. I got to grow out Westman as a kid because my mom did business out there and just dragged the whole family out there for months at a time. Had I not made up my mind I was going to be a trout bum in Montana, Wyoming, or Idaho, I would have stayed in Wisconsin because I loved it that much. So I always knew I was coming back, or I always thought it would be cool to. But during COVID and just the changes that I'd seen in Jackson and Victor and Yellowstone, it was I was ready for a move. Yeah. We went for it. It's been great.
I love that you were talking about 9 years old when you knew you wanted to be a trout bum. It's like it's like career day. They're like, I want to be a doctor. I'm going to be a fireman. Jeff's like, I'm going to live in my car and fish as hard as I can.
Yeah, and it's funny because I should add to that because my dad obviously was like, no frickin' way, kid. You're going to do what I did and have a family in this. But I really was not college material because of all I joked about, drawing on the desk and going fishing. I got in a lot of trouble at school when I was a kid. not for bad stuff, but for stupid stuff, like I'm telling you. And my dad, it was kind of breaking his heart, I think. And he made a deal with me when I was in 10th grade. He said, if you go to college and you graduate from college, I will support whatever you want to do, and that includes moving out west and being a trout bum. I don't know if he thought I'd be able to graduate, but
you thought you'd see the light when you got through 4 years of college. But I'm going to become an engineer.
Yeah,
zero chance.
No, and I graduated in 4 years, so it saved him some money, and he supported. He came to my graduation. He said, well, you're going to point your car out west, or you coming back east? I said, I'm picking up my girlfriend in Duluth, and I'm going west. And he goes, good for you. And that girlfriend, by the way, ended up being my wife, Granny.
And she's still around.
Amazing.
She's supported the trout bum life. And
she loves it.
She's all in. Well, we were talking in the intro about your quest for 500. And I want to know, Jeff, what was the moment when you consciously thought, I'm going to see how many different and unique species I can catch on a fly? Because when you're a young kid, and even when you're a young man, say those first few years in Jackson, it's all about getting onto the water. It's all about, I want to catch a bunch of fish, and I want to catch big fish. But eventually, it kind of crossed over for you where you're like, I don't want to just, catch the biggest trophy out there or go out and catch as many as I can a day. I want to catch as many different and unique species as I possibly can. Did this, for you, start off as kind of a personal competition? Was it a joke with your buddies, or was it simple curiosity? Do you remember the genesis of the idea of tracking and recording and starting to kind of keep a record of the different species?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's all a curiosity thing, and it goes back to my childhood. I remember catching, number one, our house had books, and we had cool fish books. And our cottage in New Hampshire, which thank God I share with 20 cousins now so we can pay the taxes, but we had a fish chart on there, and it had chain pickerel, it had pike, it had muskellunge, just an example, largemouth bass, all that cool stuff, all the sunfish. And every day of my childhood, when I was up camp, I stared at that at some point during the day because it was right there in the kitchen. And I just remember, we had only chain pickerel on Lake Winnipesaukee where I spent time as a kid. And I'm like, when are we going to catch one of these pike or these muskellunge things? And I remember my dad's like, oh, you're going to go to Canada, that we'll probably never get to do that, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, well, maybe you're never going to get to do that. I remember just thinking. So that's kind of like my curiosity was there. And I did add those species. One of the reasons I went to college in Wisconsin, I chose that for the fishing because I knew I had pike and muskellunge there. And one of the reasons I moved out west was because I knew if I worked in a fly shop in Jackson Hole, I'd meet people that traveled around the world maybe I would get to. In fact, I chose that shop because the owner, Jack Dennis, was a traveler. He's a trout traveler, but still. And then I started traveling. And one day, and this is probably only 25 years ago, a customer came in. They always come in and say, how was your trip to Belize, Jeff? Or, how was that trip, your first time to South America? What'd you get into? And they could just see me gleaming. And it wasn't about, oh, my God, I got my first permit. It was like, holy cow. And crossing the flat was this crazy-looking fish. It was a grouper, and I caught it, and it was a Goliath grouper. Back at the time, it would have been a Jewfish. And they're like, wow, and that got you more excited than your permit? I'm like, yeah, the way it took to fly. And they started getting to the point where, like, have you ever wrote down all the different fish you've caught? And I never have. No big deal. I mean, whatever. I'm not doing it for any purpose or anything. And then my parents were gradually throwing away my stuff back east because I'd been gone for 25 years now. One day my dad came out with a van load. He just gave me all this crap. And I'm like, oh, he goes, it sure is now. And I'm going through it, throwing stuff away, and I find calendars from 1974. And the summer calendar, every single day I fished, and I wrote down what I caught. I mean, I was 9 years old. And I went through 1975 and 76, and I did this for years before I went to high school and became, started being a joker and didn't fish as much anymore. There were other things. But, yeah, so it's a long time thing, and it probably wasn't until 20 years ago that I actually sat down in the store. One of the kids in the shop said, hey, Currier, I'll help you make your list because I do whatever he does on computer. And he said, we'll start working on it. And I started. And it took probably 5 years to really get it to where, I was probably 90% accurate because I kept forgetting things. That's number one. All of a sudden you're going through an old slide and you're like, oh my God, didn't realize I caught this or that, and some things you even had to look up. So it was cool. And then when I got to about 250, I'm like, I'm going to go for 300. I'm actually going to start keeping track of this stuff. And it just got momentum.
Because I know people are going to ask about that, right? I mean, it's It's a big number, coming up on 500. And it's like, I've probably caught 500 species. Someone says that, right? It's like, well, how do you know? You have gone to great lengths, especially over the last 25 years, to document and accurately record these species. As you were saying, you would pull out old slides. You would say, okay, here I am with this fish. I caught this. You would write it down. At this point, all these years later, this is not an approximate number. I mean, you have been meticulous in tracking this now for the last 25 years. You journal this, you write it down on your website. You've got a blog about it. You've got photo evidence of all this stuff. So when people are like, how in the world does this guy know if he has 500? You know.
Can you believe I've written about every single day of fishing since October of 2009? Every single day, except I had one instance where I had a friend that drowned during the day. I never wrote about that, but every single fish that I've caught since 2009 is, as far as new ones, are on my blog. I couldn't even write a full paragraph in 2009. I mean, granted, I had written some books, but I had a lot of help with those. And it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, to be clear, you were a published author at that point.
Yeah, I know. My famous line to my mother, I love it. She said, "You never read a damn book in 12 years of school, and now you have 2 books." That's the joke. She won't be saying that to me, but she'll be like telling her friends why I'm sitting there like, I don't know where you got it.
My famous author son.
Yeah, right.
Well, that's pretty amazing. And I know that this journal that you've kept has become a pretty cool thing for you. At what point did you realize that this wasn't just kind of a whim or it'd be fun to write this list out with the guy you worked with in the fly shop, but that this had kind of become a life's pursuit?
I would say that it's probably been 10, 15 years that here's what happened. So all of a sudden I got like most of the normal fish. And even a lot of the ones that, people like dream of catching. Like, how many people can say, they've caught tigerfish? I mean, there's a pretty good handful nowadays. But, stuff at the level of tigerfish all over the world I had caught.
Yeah, you had gone down there. So it was tarpon and bonefish and peacock bass. And I mean, I hate to refer to them as the standards, but for traveling anglers, these are known destinations. And, for instance, if you're going to the Amazon, you're going for peacock bass, so you're probably going to catch them. You're going, to Cuba, the handful of species that you're going to catch there. So you kind of go down the list, and I guess you could call them the standards. For people that haven't traveled a lot, they would still seem very exotic. But for a traveling angler, you go down and you get the, more of the common species, and you kind of collect those, and then your list is starting to fill out pretty nicely.
Yeah, I knew like it would be me maybe I am going to Africa and I'm going on a tiger. Maybe I'm hosting a trip for yellow dog to Cameroon or something. And then the first thing I'm going to do is see what else is there and say, okay, I got to make sure that I also come home with a Niger barb. There's a couple oddball fish that are probably going to take dry flies that are not more than a foot long, but I'm going to bring a 5 weight and tackle a couple of those, get some great photos, look them up when I get home. And I want to make this very clear. I'm not trying to be like, wow, I'm the only guy that's caught this many species, blah, blah, blah. I'm not that kind of guy. I do it for me. People are always like, do you have the record? I'm like, there's no record. I'm not trying to beat anybody. I'm not trying to get in the Guinness Book of World Records. I love fish. And one of the classes I did get A's in college was ichthyology. I did study ichthyology. And I remember my professor was just like, he's like, dude, you freaking love this shit. And he's like, and I remember the first day they have a test. You walk in the room and they had maybe 100 fish laid out there, all formaldehyde thing, and you write around and identify it. I got like 80 of them. He goes, nobody's even ever come close to that. And I'm like, I've been reading fish books since I was a kid.
Yeah, it's kind of my thing.
Yeah, this is what I do. And he goes, well, welcome to the class, And so I don't do it for other people. I don't trying to break records. I do it because I think, for me, it's really cool. When you see me taking a picture yesterday of a chub, a European chub out here, which I've caught many times before, I still pick up that fish. I'm like, you cool little devil. You made a fun day for me.
Yeah, for sure. You appreciate them all.
Yeah, I do.
Well, when you talk about the list, which we'll refer to it as this list, this collection of all these different species you've caught, have you ever felt trapped by the list? Were there ever moments where you're like, I need this fix for a new species on a regular basis? Every trip I've got to come home with that. or it's somehow taken away from it. Have you ever kind of felt trapped by this?
I won't say like trapped, like I felt like, oh, I can't go there. I've already caught those fish. Like I still love to go down to Belize and hang out with our friends at Belize River Lodge and Turner Flats. I mean, I never would be like, oh, I've caught all those fish. I mean, that's not my thing. But I have gotten trapped where I'm like, okay, it's time to go catch this fish. And then I go all the way there to catch this fish. And by day 3, I haven't got it. It starts to become like a really war. It starts eating at you. And I've had trips where I have not succeeded. A great example would be like catching my first big Atlantic salmon. You know, I was telling you and Patterson about it, you know, the other day when we were having lunch. It's like, that was a miserable 11 days. You know, maybe the first 6, 7 days are great, but then it just starts to eat at you. And, you know, a lot of people go through the same thing on a much smaller scale. Like they don't catch a permit their first trip to Belize. Well, welcome to the club, dude. It's not anything what I'm telling you about my experience with that salmon. Or a really funny one, too. I went to St. Brandos the first time back in 2017.
In the Indian Ocean.
In the Indian Ocean, yep. And I was going over with our friends from Fly Castaway as a guest, and they said, Curry, if you can bring a couple buddies, that would be great. Well, I did. I brought a couple buddies with me. We're in Paris partying, you know, halfway there. And they're like, so Curry, what are we really fishing for? I heard this huge bonefish. I'm like, I'm fishing for the yellow permit, the Indo-Pacific. And they're like, what? There's a yellow permit? Well, they both got them. I didn't. You know, shit happens.
And now you're no longer friends with these guys.
No,
you don't talk.
No, and it's so funny because Scotty got his the first afternoon, and I was like, dude, that's just amazing. Aren't they beautiful? He goes, don't worry, Jeff, you'll get one. I'm like, oh, you just hexed me, dude. You just ruined it.
Don't worry, little fella. You'll have your turn.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of fun stuff. And I actually went back a year later and nailed 2 big ones. And since then, I've got 15 of the Indos. It's just the whole process, and it's very cool. And you know what? I don't ever want it to be easy. You know, I don't want to go to a place and get it every time. It makes it that much better, and when you look back on it and when it happens, you know.
Yeah, you can't take any fishing situation for granted. As anglers, we all know that. And you know, if you get to the point where you are taking it for granted, you know, switch to a different sport, I think.
Yep.
Well, have you found yourself lately, as you've gotten closer to this big number of 500 species, have you found yourself actually planning trips around targeting a new and unusually difficult species?
A little bit. Usually it's not a popular species. Like, you know, maybe I'm at the Seychelles, and this is a good one. Last year I hosted a trip for the Seychelles, went to Providence, and I've got almost all the triggerfish. I think I got 12 triggerfish species to my name. And there's one there called the vampire trigger. And the only reason I know about the vampire trigger is because we were chasing milkfish one day, and one of the guys got a weird-looking fish halfway the boat, lost, and the guy just goes, oh, it was just a vampire trigger. And I'm like, what? Wait a minute. What's a vampire trigger? And it turns out I think it's like called the orange tooth trigger or something like that, the red tooth. And I Googled that up that night. I said, boys, that's what we're doing today. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, oh, we're going to go out and catch that thing. And we didn't get one. Took like 3 days. Every time we went by the milkfish area there, I'm like, let's go out and see if they're there. They're like, Curry, the milkfish are over there. I'm like, that's okay. And I ended up getting it. It's a bright purple triggerfish with a red mouth, red teeth.
I remember the photo. I've never actually seen one.
Gorgeous creature.
Yeah. They're gorgeous. I love it. The guide's probably like, Currier, there's only 4 of them that live in the Seychelles. You're really going to focus on this?
Now they know. When I come, they're like, so Currier, I found something you need to try for it. I'm like, sweet.
Yeah. See,
your tip will be good.
The reputation is proceeding.
True. That's true.
Yeah, no doubt. They're like, oh, Currier's going to be here. We're going to go focus on some stuff that nobody else.
And they're excited by it, change it up.
As they should be. Absolutely. Well, what do you think is harder? Do you think doing all of the research on the species, learning about what types of environment they live in, where you're most likely to catch them, what they're probably likely to eat as far as a fly pattern goes, is that harder in kind of figuring that out, or finding the fish?
It's a little of both. So there are a lot of times, like the fish that I might be after now is a hard fish to find, because usually now I'm going for a rare fish or a fish that's a long way away. And that's not always true either. I'll add to that in a minute. But for instance, Nile perch. And I'm lucky. I worked in Egypt back in the 2006 to 2009. So I was on the Lake Nasser and the Nile a lot. So I got to experience Nile perch. But now, if I wanted to catch my first Nile perch, it would be a a biatch to find them. You know, the Cameroon thing with our friends at African Waters, they've had problems there. I mean, that's the last place that I banged up some good Niles. That was probably 218, but it's a fish because it's one of the giant fish of the world. They're not easy to find. Unfortunately, poaching and, you know, the lack of, you know, water left for them is a very serious issue.
Well, in the last 15 years, I mean, the numbers have plummeted, so it's actually gotten harder just to find them.
Yes.
No doubt.
And that's just one species. There's a lot that
Yeah.
are very difficult.
Well, how much of your success on a trip, when you're species hunting, let's call it, do you attribute to kind of the research you've done on biology, the logistics, the diplomacy, versus fishing skills? And the reason I ask this, because you and I, again, have been all over the place for 30 years together. We've traveled to some pretty exotic destinations. You are, without question, one of the most focused anglers I've ever been around. Whenever we're somewhere there, I promise you no one is fishing harder or longer than Jeff Currier is. You just kind of get in this zone, almost this zen-like state where you're going to go out there and you are going to fish and fish and fish, and you're going to hammer it as long as it takes to get what you're trying to catch. And that's, everyone thinks of themselves as like a hardcore angler. It's like, yeah, man, I'll get out there with the best of them and I'll grind it into the ground. That's so easier said than done. I've watched you do it in places like India and Africa and South America and in the saltwater environments where, day 5, I'm like, hey man, we might need to talk to Currier. I think he might die out here. I mean, you go so insanely hard, right? And you're obviously an accomplished, skilled angler. You've been doing it your entire life. But again, angling skill versus the understanding of kind of the biology and fish behavior.
Well, a little bit back to, there was a little more of an answer to your last question about, how do you figure out how to catch these fish? So when you see me grinding it out for an oddball species, a lot of times I'm trying to figure stuff out because, look, our guide this week, David, he's awesome. This dude fishes, but he doesn't fly fish. He has no idea, how to catch the fish we're after this week with a fly. So I'm doing the trial and error stuff. And a lot of these places we've been around the world together, I'm the one that's, the guy doesn't have the answers. He's got the keys to the boat. I have to figure it out. And I love that. But even as you're trying to figure it out, you have to be prepared for failure. And when you have failure, you don't okay, let's go have a beer or I'm going to take a nap. You have to immediately go forward with your next move. And sometimes it is under absolutely extreme, miserable conditions. But you got to look at the calendar. I'm flying home in 4 days. I got 4 days to get this done, to get as much stuff together here. So you just that's what drives me to keep grinding it out in these horrible conditions sometimes.
You talked a few minutes ago about an 11-day pursuit of an Atlantic salmon in Norway, I believe that was. You talked about your first trip to St. Brandon's Atoll in the Indian Ocean. Your buddies each got Indo-Pacific permit. You came home, blanked that trip. What are some of the most memorable species that for you have taken multiple trips or expeditions to finally catch?
Hands down, I would say probably my number one is golden mahseer. A lot of people are into the golden mahseer now. They're aware of it. But when I went for my first trip in 2002, it was Granny and I without a guide. It's back when I did everything do-it-yourself. Threw the backpacks on and traveled Asia for 3 months, Nepal and India. And guess how many we caught? 0. I didn't catch one in 3 months. And that was probably got at least 30 days of hardcore fishing. In fact, we went to Everest Base Camp. I have fished from Lukla to base camp, every inch of that water. People saw me as they're like, there's that crazy guy fishing, and doesn't he know there's no fish in there? I didn't know.
This guy's at 15,000 feet. There's no fish in there.
I also, at that time, there was, what we know about catching golden mahseer and fly was not available. So I was figuring it out for myself. Thank God for getting home and writing about it, and then having, our friend Misty Dillon look me up and inviting me back over. If that was 2002, I went over in 2008, and I caught my first big golden mahseer with Misty, and that will be one of my most memorable fish. And you already know, but later that trip I got a really giant one and I almost got eaten by a tiger in the same day. It was pretty exciting.
Yeah, it was a spicy week.
Yeah, it was a spicy trip. You get home and tell Granny, she's like, so how was your trip? And I'm like, where do I start?
There's adventure fishing, and then there's adventure fishing.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it. Well, what do you say the percentage of times nowadays when you travel, say, halfway around the world to target a specific species where you're going to come home empty-handed? Is it 10% of the time? Is it 50% of the time? Hard to pin down, but what do you think?
I would say when you go for a really hard one, it's probably 25%, you know? Yeah, you just never know.
Yeah, you never know.
There's so many factors. Usually you're trying to figure things out, and you got to worry about weather, and you got to worry about if the fish exists. I mean, you can see, type in a cool fish on the internet, you can have all kinds of pictures, and it looks easy.
Yeah, I remember a few years ago, you and Granny did a trip to Madagascar.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
That's a place, like, there is zero fishing infrastructure when it comes to guiding. There's no, like, fly fishing lodges in Madagascar. You had a list of some species you wanted to check off, but I mean, there was, again, you might have found somebody that had the keys to a boat, and that was about as close as you were going to get to a guide or anyone with knowledge. And that was definitely I'm here now, I've got to figure it out.
Oh yeah, that was. I remember when I mentioned the word dock. First of all, the guy we found with a boat, he doesn't understand fly fishing, which is a very common thing. And he shows up with a bunch of lures and stuff. And I'm like, get that out of the boat. It's in my way, what I'm trying to do. And then he was horrified what I was trying to do, which was fly fish. And then I remember...
he's like, look at this idiot.
Yeah, and I would get excited about catching some small weird thing. And I go, so take me to the dogtooth tuna. And he lost his mind. He's like, do you know how dangerous a dogtooth tuna is? That stuff that you made me tackle the boat can't even handle dogtooth tuna. Blah. He went off. And, we ended up not catching dogtooth tuna. We did get a pretty big barred mackerel. It was about 70 pounds. But and since have got the dogtooth. But, yeah, that's what you're up against. And, by the way, Madagascar, I'll tell you right now, for those who are out there dreaming of going fishing there, it has been pretty badly wiped out. Poaching is something you really run into when you spin the globe and think you found the place. Be careful.
Yeah, that's another challenge of species hunting like this, is that, 50 years ago, even 25 years ago in a lot of these places, it certainly would have been a lot easier.
Yes.
Now, especially in a lot of these off-the-grid countries, a lot of third-world countries, again, poaching and overfishing has taken such a toll that's, I think, magnified the challenge for catching a lot of these species. It's just there's not as many there. It's
very sad because a lot of times people will be like, so do you think somebody's going to catch 500? My first response is, I hope so. I've spent the last 40 years of my life helping people catch more fish. I would think it would be really cool if somebody, went out there and got 750 or something. That would be awesome. I'm happy for them. But it's going to be pretty darn tough to do.
What's the closest, Jeff, you've ever come to giving up on a species? Or has this actually happened where you're just like, you know what, I'm writing this one off. I don't think it's possible, and I'm moving on to the next one?
Yeah, no, I haven't. I have not run into that ever yet. I've definitely, that Atlantic salmon trip I keep referring to, I did catch a couple smolts, not smolts, but, what do they call them, jacks or whatever, literally like a 7 or 8 pounder. I was excited about. I remember it was a wait in line type thing in Norway, and they're like, stop taking a picture of that, get moving, kid, And I remember the yellow permit thing definitely shattered me, but I went back the next year. So I have not given up on any yet. I've definitely had a few that I've had to put in the back burner for a while, but I still intend to get them.
Yeah. Have you come across anybody else that's doing a similar thing, that's keeping a list? And is there like a race to 500 that you're aware of out there?
I don't think so, but there's definitely hundreds of people that keep lists now. I talk to them on the internet all the time, or they come, I know a lot of people that listen right now because I do almost every fly fishing show. I'm one of the speakers there. I'm there doing my art stuff. And I love it when people come up to me like, hey, thanks to you, I started a list. I'm up to 52, or, I just broke 100. And I think that is so cool. You're an inspiration to me. And I'm like, well, wish my mom could hear that right now, But it's just very cool. So there's a lot of people keeping lists now, a lot. And I think it's great because we finally got people, the new generation is like, I don't want to go to every blue ribbon trout stream the rest of my life. I'm okay if I can't afford to go to Montana this year, and I'm going to fish my Illinois pond downtown when my kids are, to bed at night. That's cool. And they love it, Finally, people are loving everything, whether it's a carp, a bluegill, or chub.
Yeah, and it's something, honestly, that our industry needs. We need to broaden our horizons. Some of these species that are, kind of the premier species that we focus so much on, whether it's trout, obviously, in a lot of the western U.S., Some of these other species could use a little bit of a break. And
Yes.
I think this is something that over the last few years has started to catch on. It's gaining momentum, where a good example of that is carp fishing. 20 years ago, there were very few people that were targeting carp on a fly. It was like Beefus and Reynolds and some of these guys. That's about it. Now, carp fishing's kind of hot. I mean, people are into it. There's more books. There's videos. I know in our fly shop, we have a whole section of carp-specific flies, and we sell a lot of them. I mean, it's something that's catching on. And certainly, I think for our resources, for the health of the sport, broadening it out and taking our focus off of some of the heavily fished species and seeing what else is out there is probably a good thing for all of us.
It's a good thing also, Klug, because those who are doing it are improving their fly fishing skill level. Carp is a very difficult fish to catch. It's a very intelligent fish. You become a good carp fisherman. When you go on a saltwater flats trip, it will help you. The hooks to a permit and a carp is very, very similar, sliding the fly and keeping contact. So when I hear people doing other species, I know that they're good anglers.
Yeah, absolutely. Broadens the base a little bit.
Yes.
Well, this is going to be a tough question for you, but I'm going to ask it anyway. If someone stole your species list tomorrow, all right, deleted it, and you're like, I knew there was a number, but now I can't. I have no record of what everything is. But Jeff, you got to keep only 3 memories of 3 specific catches. What would those species be? Quick, off the top of your head.
My first brown trout with my dad. I would say my golden mussel with Misty. And, oh boy, God, I had this a second ago. Maybe when I finally got my big Atlantic salmon with my friend Ingo in Iceland. It was a few years later, but it was a donkey, and it was unbelievable.
That's a special one.
Yeah, it was.
Well, which species surprised you the most after you finally landed it? Where, for instance, you hadn't caught it before, you were pursuing it, it was on the list, that was your goal, whether it's day 2 of a trip or 3 trips back to a destination to finally get it. When you brought that fish to hand and you're looking at it, which one surprised you the most? It's like, man, I knew this would be cool, but I had no idea it would be this special.
Oh, man. Boy, that is another tough one. I would say the first time I got my first bumphead parrotfish, that was pretty damn cool. That was pretty mind-blowing. I knew they were hard. There are people out there who say, you can't catch them. People that catch them snag them. But you talk to the right guides, someone like Tim Babbage or, some of the really good guys that have been in the Seychelles a long time. They're like, no, they will take a crab on time to time. Or, think about it, a lot fish don't have hands. So if they want to investigate something, they have to do it with their mouth, which unfortunately for them could have a hook in it if you're on the other end. And so I do remember just being fascinated with the way that fish curiously came over and took that fly, tipped on it. And I can't remember the name of the guide I was with, but it was amazing because he told me, he said, Currier, you were telling me about, salmon and steelhead and how they take the fly and then you let them take a couple feet. He goes, let the same thing happen with the bumpy because you can't hook them in their beak.
Right.
But as he swims away with it, it'll go to the corner of his mouth and that's the only fleshy spot. And don't set the hook too hard. Just kind of go tight and give it a little jab and you got him. And it worked out like a charm, exactly like that. But the fight was... I've caught parrotfish before, but that thing was like...
The bumpies are in a different league.
Yeah, it was insane. And then to get that thing and have it start squeaking at me and looking at me like it's, not a fish anymore. It was like, God, quick, get the photo as quickly as possible. I want to let this thing go,
Yeah.
And after he was gone, I wanted him back to check him out again.
Was that on Providence or Farquhar?
That was Farquhar.
Farquhar. Yeah, and then, of course, when you land one of these bumpies, because, it's like trying to hold a water bison. They're just massive, and they're crazy looking. It almost feels like an alien species. You finally get them in hand. They're very difficult to hold. You want that picture,
Yes.
so you kind of scoop it in the water. You lift it up just a little bit for the picture, and it immediately shits all over you.
Yeah.
You're like world famous for
You're
that.
covered. Yep.
Covered.
Covered.
But it's kind of a badge of honor.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Is there a species that comes to mind that just about destroyed you as far as breaking you mentally in the pursuit of that one particular species?
There's been a few oddball ones. Like I'll tell you right now, milkfish would be one for me. And I know there's people listening like, oh my God, the first time I went to the Seychelles, I got 3 milkfish. Well, it wasn't that easy for me because I started probably before they went when it was all figured out. The first time I chased milkfish was I don't know if it was in Baja in 1996 or if it was, first time I went to the Middle East. I don't know, but that became a nemesis fish for me. And even when I went with the right guys in the Seychelles, 10 years ago, they're like, "Oh, we'll get it for you, Currier, right now." And I'm like, "Oh, here we go." Sure enough, every client I'm with catches them, and I don't. And I'm okay with that. But, yeah, that would be one. The other one, too, this is crazy, striped marlin.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now are going down, fishing with our buddies at, in Baja, the Lobos boys, and catching them on their first try, catching 10, whatever. I don't know what the difference is, what they're doing, but, I've been a lot of times to Baja with Grant Hartman and some of my best friends, and they were not easy to come by. It took me a while to get my first striped marlin.
Well, and I mean, that speaks to, I think, the evolution of the sport, too. I mean, there's so much more that's known about these particular species these days. There have been people who've gone down there, they've fished hard for them, they've started operations, they've worked to crack the code, and now, of course, they can offer it to the world of angling. But there was a lot of places that for a long time, nobody had cracked the code on any of this stuff. And going back to what we were discussing earlier in this program, when you have to go down and kind of figure this stuff out for your own, it's going to take a lot longer, a lot more trial and error, no doubt.
And I think that's better because it's a lot more fun. I think it's cool when you have to crack the code. Yeah. Because you're learning stuff along the way, and the reward is it's so high when you had to do that.
Well, we've talked a lot about these different species and the ones that are most memorable for you, the ones that almost broke you mentally.
One other. Getting a big rooster off the beach.
Yeah.
I'd caught roosters, small ones, for years down there, but to actually get a big rooster, like, a 50-pound plus off the beach. But I'm going to say off the beach like 5 times, because I know people hop in planes that go out and they throw minnows over the side, sardines, and chum them in, you catch them. And that's cool because everybody should hold that fish. And if that's what you got to do it. But I walk the beach like it's the ranch at the Henry's Fork for the last 30 years. I'm kind of over it now. I haven't done it in a few years now. But, a week-long trip and you catch one big fish, those are really, really...
That's with your buddy Grant down there.
Yep. Gransky's taught me a lot about rooster fishing. And unfortunately, my late friend Sammy was who I always did it with.
Yeah. Those are special fish when they get that big. And when you're doing it on foot. That's a different ball game.
It's a different ball game.
Well, we talked a lot about these different species that have been memorable for you, that have had an impact on you. Which destination, Jeff, has had the greatest impact on you? Basically changed you, not just as an angler, but as a person. Regardless of the species of the fishing, just the destination you visited where you're like, man, that was a life-changing trip.
I would have to say, if it's one place, definitely Belize, because that's really my first big international fishing trip. I put my life on the line to do it. I was 22 years old. I hadn't even paid off my college loans. I was making $4.75 an hour at the fly shop and struggling to pay rent and get beer money, and then I book a trip to Belize. And I had some help from the fly shop. They let me put it on my account. And back then, I think that was 1989, trip to Belize or Lodge was $975.
That was big money back then.
It was big. For me, it sure was.
Yeah. And you went into debt to do it.
I put it on so I was allowed to put it on my account, work it off over the next year. What they didn't know is that I did 2 trips. I doubled it. They had no idea until I left, and they couldn't fire me because it was going to take a long time for them to get back $1,800. And I ended up going to Turniff Flats and Belize River Lodge, and they became lifelong friends. Craig and Karen were at Turniff, and Mike and Marguerite were at Belize River Lodge on those trips. And they adopted me, especially the Belize River Lodge. Because Mike and Marguerite still considers herself my second mom.
Yeah, the Huesners, wonderful people.
I'm so excited that I went down and visited Mike one last time. At this time last year, I was down there and had just a great time with the whole family.
Mike just passed this year, Mike Huesner.
Yeah, recently.
And just an absolute titan of saltwater fishing and the lodge business and conservation and all the things he's done in Belize. That's pretty neat. You got to spend one last trip with him.
Yeah, and I've been to Belize probably like you over 25 times, and it's like my home away from home. But it all happened in that trip in 1989, where I'm like, that just opened my eyes, and I said, "Who gives a crap about the money? I'll come up with my $1,800 in the next couple of years, and in the meantime, I'm going to find ways to go other places." And that's when I started throwing the backpack on, buying, a plane ticket, and not giving a crap what happened. Back then, it was The Lonely Planet. Which is an old not fishing guide, an old travel guide that we used to use before the internet. And those were good days.
And that's been a motto of mine in my lifetime of travel is just say yes. Because you rarely regret it when you do. You get an opportunity to go, it's like, shit, you're going to come up with 1,000 reasons that you probably shouldn't, or maybe you can't afford it, or you're too busy, or there's too much going on. It's like, you know what? Just say yes. You will always be happy that you did. And that's what you'll look back on. And, I guess that's another question that I have for you. We talked about, when you were young, how you evolve as an angler. You want to catch a bunch of fish, and you want to catch big fish, and then for you it became different species. But there is a point in an angling career where it becomes less about the fish and more about the people you're traveling with, the buddies you're spending time with, the people you meet along the way and you become friends with. Do you remember at what point in your career that you became very aware of the importance of that?
I would say very young, because those early days in the fly shop, one of the reasons I settled in Jackson Hole too, because I had some time, as a kid on the Henry's Fork, and I had been there for some opening days of the ranch, and I remember seeing that trout. If I was 16 years old, I'm looking at these people I considered old back then, but they were anywhere from 20 to 80 years old. They were old compared to me at that time, and I saw that there was more to fishing than the fishing. They were having fun in the parking lot, visiting with each other, drinking. So at a very young age, I saw that. And then when I moved to Jackson in 1987 and started going over for the openers, I remember telling Jack Dennis, I said, I cannot work on opening of the ranch. I have to be off the 14th through 17th, so I get the whole experience. And it's amazing, I was quickly kind of welcomed into that group of old great trout bums. I think it's some of the names of the greats that were there just hanging out. And I saw
it was a who's who back in the day.
Yeah, and it could be John Garrett kicking back there, and Jim Vincent, just
Andre
awesome.
Puyans, Mel Krieger, all those guys.
Yeah, all those guys. And it was like, wait a minute, these guys aren't going out there for that head that's rising right now. They're actually pointing it out to each other and saying, whose turn? I thought that was cool, And you know what? I learned a lot from watching other anglers go out and do that.
Yeah, especially guys like that.
Yeah,
no
that's
doubt.
right.
No doubt.
That's right.
Well, I want to circle back on the big number, your 500th species on the fly. We've been talking about it now throughout this episode. People are like, all right, already, just what the hell is it? What are you guys over there in France chasing? Of all of the fish that you've caught and that you've recorded, there's still a lot of species left in the world that you haven't caught, that are not on your list. What species did you focus on and select for your 500th species? And why are we here in France in the middle of this insane European heat wave in late June of 2026? What are we here chasing?
We are here chasing the Wels catfish, also known in French as the salure, a fish that I have definitely known about for over 30 years because I made my first attempt at the Wels catfish in Turkey, which goes way back to probably the late 90s with Granny, and that was a disastrous day. The guy showed up late. When he showed up and saw a fly rod, he hopped in his truck and took off. So that didn't go so well. Also, the river was completely blown out that day. Even the chub fishing was difficult. But yeah, it's a giant catfish. It's one of the giant fish of the world. It is the largest freshwater fish in Europe. Because it's that giant fish, I would say if you went back 20, 30 years ago, it was in grave danger. Now, I won't say near extinction, although probably most places it was. And fortunately, Europe is pretty civilized. They addressed the situation, and now the Wels catfish is making a comeback in a lot of places, including places where it was not native. I don't think the salure was native to France, but it has been here for 70 years. I know people fish for them a lot in Spain, but definitely was not native there. It's more of a Danube River system and then isolated areas in Eastern Europe and in Northern Europe where it has existed. But it's making a comeback, and I want to hold one.
Well, for listeners that and I know people are sitting at home right now Googling, they're like, what the hell is a Wels catfish? I got to see what this looks like. Describe the anatomy of a Wels. I mean, I guess I would kick that off by saying it's less like a fish and more like a dragon or a serpent. I mean, this thing is a crazy, crazy looking species. Describe the anatomy, the size, kind of the characteristics of a Wels catfish.
Yeah, I think most people that fish know what a catfish is. Oh, gross, whatever. Maybe they've seen channel cats or bullheads in their day. But this guy is much more eel-like. So like his dorsal fin goes all the way to the tail as one piece, kind of like an arapaima. It comes along the bottom. The head is very flat, kind of like a flathead catfish, and that's so it can sneak into very shallow water and attack like frogs and birds without displacing water. They're very sneaky. But they are catfish, so little bitty eyes, like, a 100-pound fish probably has eyes the size of an eraser head. I don't even know why catfish have eyes sometimes.
Yeah, they're basically blind.
They're basically blind, but they have a very strong lateral line. They also have some sensors inside the mouth that they can pick up vibrations and stuff. Great smell, which doesn't help you in fly fishing because you're fishing an artificial. And the biggest thing about the Wels catfish is they get gigantic. I mentioned is the largest fish in Europe. They don't know how big they used to get. I think there's fossils of like 15 footers, which would be estimated 600 pounds. Nowadays, a 3-meter fish, which is just under 10 feet, is a very rare fish, but they do exist. So if you're on a fish like this trip, give me a meter. Give me 1 meter, I'll be happy. Give me 2 meters, and that would be an amazing fish. Probably one of my top 10 fish in my life if I got a fish that big.
Yeah, and if you haven't seen a Wels catfish, Google it and check out some YouTube videos, not just of how crazy looking the fish is, but how predatory they are. And when they decide to eat and attack, it's something to see. There's no question about it.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Were you at all nervous, Jeff, about choosing such a notoriously difficult and unpredictable fish as number 500? I mean, this is not a commonly targeted species, especially on a fly.
Yeah, definitely not scared. I mean, look, when you've got 499, there's not going to be a lot of easy ones out there. And so I knew I was going to pick something hard. In fact, you and I had this conversation a year and a half ago, and you said, well, if we make a movie out of it, why don't you write down 5? And I think I went from the Goliath tigerfish to the Wels to, some crazy thing that lived in the old ponds in Baghdad that Saddam Hussein used to fish at.
Yeah, some big cichlid.
Yeah, something awesome.
There,
something I still got to go get, But, you chose this for a very good reason, and I was excited you did because I'm in a hotel now. We'll probably have a glass of wine after this before we go fishing tonight. A good meal again. We've already had one good meal. This is pretty cushy. I'm digging it. Everybody thought I was going to be, in Asia or Africa or South America, suffering, and we're not suffering.
No, we're not.
Other than the heat.
The heat. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second.
Yeah.
But, I mean, fishing in Europe is so fun. Again, you just heard the church bells in the background. I mean, there's something about fishing over here on the continent that I don't know. As I've gotten a little bit older, I've come to appreciate it a lot more, and I love spending time, whether it's in France or Spain or Ireland or Slovenia, these different countries that we've been building up in our programs. It's just an incredible opportunity to really expand your list of destinations and also species, no doubt about it. But the Wels are interesting. I think at this point of the week, we probably could have focused on like a coelacanth or something. Maybe it's a little more attainable because they are not easy on a fly. As you said, they feed so much by sense of smell, and so we've completely eliminated that from the equation.
Yep.
And you are just grinding away with, 14 weight fly rods, heavy 500 grain sink tip lines, fly patterns that are about 16 inches long and cast like a wet cat on the end of a hook. It's just... it is not for the faint of heart.
Well, the sad thing, it wasn't supposed to be this hard. I mean, realistically, the Wels catfish is known for being in like 3 to 5 feet of water when they're hunting. And our guide, David Moreau, who's just friggin' awesome, he's just not a fly fishing guide. He's caught them on lures and he catches them on top. He's passionate about the Wels catfish.
He's a Wels guy.
He's a Wels guy, and I've learned so much from him and enjoyed his time. But normally, I mean, he told me how to pack. I've talked to him 100 times since we hired him in December. And he's like, your number one fly is going to be a popper, a weedless popper. That's what you want. And I'm just like, are you freaking shitting me? This is going to be unbelievable. And the first day, we fished poppers all day. And he hadn't been up here in 2 weeks. He was up here 2 weeks ago scouting, and the fishing was phenomenal. He saw them. And we went to all the places we saw them. And, man, it ain't happening. They have gone to deep water because of the heat. Instead of being able to fish topwater or even a floating line, we're having to dredge and hopefully bump into one down deep. And I did, we hooked, the first night. I had one crush a fly and a tail out, but there were so many weeds around. I'm most certain that my fly probably had weeds around the hook, even though it was a weedless fly, and it felt like I hooked a tree. In fact, you might remember I stripped like 3 times. I'm like, something feels weird. That's because it was like pulling a little bit, and then I rolled him on the surface and lost him. He went right under the boat, so I got a good look at him. And unfortunately, that's the only good look I've had. Yeah,
and we should mention that one of the things that has made this week so challenging is we arrived here in France at the beginning of a record-setting heat wave. Every single day has been well over 100 degrees. The only thing that's in the news over here is that it's broken the all-time record in recorded history in France for temperatures. And every day it's been 102 to 106. Not a cloud in the sky, absolutely scorching. And we're out there grinding, trying to find this Wels. People think, oh, Jeff, you got the greatest job in the world. It must be so nice going to these places and just getting to fish for a living. And then you have weeks like this where it is an absolute brawl, just a battle.
It can happen. I mean, it's happened to me before, but this one's a dandy. And what makes it especially tough is, losing that fish the first day. But, in 5 days, 6 days, whatever we got here, when that happens on day one, you're like, oh, cool, this is actually going to happen this week, And that was the only one we've really seen so far. So we still got time.
Yeah. I'm
not giving up. My shoulders are feeling it. I came here with bad shoulders. I live with bad shoulders. And you throw a 14 weight like it's, throwing a streamer out on the South Fork, things are going to blow up when I get home. I don't feel pain when I'm in the field. I just don't allow it. I'm just that mentally type of guy. You would have trouble killing me. I would chew nails if I had to succeed. But I just texted with Granny. She's like, oh, my God, you're going to be a mess when you get home. I'm like, yeah, I might be. It's possible.
No question.
You'll be mowing the lawn for a while. I don't know if I can start it.
Well, if everything goes according to plan in Burgundy, right, and you get to land a Wels catfish on the fly and hit this huge milestone, that would be kind of the perfect scenario. But as we mentioned, that has not happened yet. We've been here a week grinding it out in the heat. We don't know what's going to happen, and therefore we can't give away anything on this specific episode, right? There is no answer yet. Because we're also here filming a movie about your overall quest, the pursuit of 500. We hope that we will have a great project that will be featured in this year's Fly Fishing Film Tour, which means that listeners might have to wait until then to find out if you were successful on the Wels.
That's true. We'll keep a little secret here, but somehow these things leak out, but you still got to see it to see the grind that goes into this, and hopefully the pure joy on my face when it happens.
Yeah, and it kind of gets back, especially a week like this that is hot and difficult and grinding it out. I think people look at you and envision this life of globetrotting international angling, where you're jetting around to these killer destinations, you're fishing great waters, you live this amazing life. But I think one thing that a lot of people don't realize is how hard you work, especially in a pursuit of a difficult species. Also, how much you've put into your career over these, multiple decades of doing this and putting it all together. The relentless drive to succeed when you're actually out there on the water. Also, the work you put into your website and your travel blog. You talked about how you've posted every single day of fishing since you first started the blog in 2009?
Yeah, 2009.
Yeah. The winter show circuits that you and Granny do every single year, your speaking schedules, all the clubs you visit. Your success, Jeff, has not just happened, right? It wasn't just like, oh, I got lucky, it happened. I mean, it's come about through a ton of hard work and dedication to not just pursue what you love, but to put together a career that actually works, which is not an easy thing in this industry.
Oh, I answered an email this morning when I woke up, from probably some young 22-year-old that's just come out of college, and he's like, hey, I want to do what you're doing. How do I get started? It's like, well, young man, you're going to have to get out there and start fish hard, become a very capable angler, get in the industry, start at the bottom stocking shelves, and no way to know I want to do what you're doing. I'm like, that's what I did. That's what I did, and I never stopped. It's been over. This next year will be my 40th year professionally in the industry. And it's a slow, steady pace before you get to the point where you're making a living at it. And even sometimes now, I think I'm just I do the industry so I can fish and travel, and that's okay.
Yeah, and you and I both get a fair number of emails on a regular basis from young people that are looking to get in the industry. I love this, and you and I were talking about it in the boat the other day. I always make it a point to respond and get back to people, and a lot of them. Well, there's two categories of these emails. One is like, "Hey, I'm just getting out of college. I really want to pursue a career in fly fishing. Can you give me some advice? How did you get started? How should I go about doing this? My answer to those people is usually like, actually, you know what? Go to Wall Street, make a ton of money, and be a client. Then you'll be able to.
That'll be easier.
Yeah, it'd be easier for sure. But my other favorite category is somebody who's like in their mid 40s, and they're clearly having a little bit of a midlife crisis. So like, I'm thinking about giving up my finance job and just jumping right into the fly fishing industry.
How become a guide.
Yeah, become a guide. But, I know you're pretty good about that too, always getting back to people and helping them out with advice and spending time talking to them, which is cool.
I love it. I had a really neat one when I was in St. Brandon's Atoll hosting a trip for Yellow Dog back in April. And it's funny that one of the guides, his name was Matthew Carmichael, and he's probably only 22. But he's sitting across the table the first night and looking at me, and he goes, "Are you Jeff Currier? Wait a minute." And he starts going through his phone. And he holds it and he goes, "I'm trying to find something that you're going to make a big smile." And he pulls up and he goes, "I found it." He goes, "When I was 17 years old, I Instagrammed you a message." He goes, "You didn't answer for like 3 weeks." I go, "That's because I didn't realize there was messaging on Instagram, to be honest with you." And he goes, "But you answered me." And he goes, and he hands it to me I'm like, "Dude, I don't have my glasses. I'm eating dinner." He goes, "I'll read it to you." And it was very cool. And then he puts it down. He goes, "That's why I'm here guiding today." I'm like, "Dude, that's friggin' awesome. You better put me on a permit tomorrow."
God,
No, I'm joking about the permit, but yeah.
You ruined this kid's life. Yeah. Congratulations.
No, he's actually he's guided in Alaska. He's 22. Yeah. He's guided in Alaska. He went up and fished. He's been to like 5 countries fishing. Hopefully, in the long term, he'll be like, "My God, I'm glad I got that that Instagram message back from." And I had to correct him. If he called me Mr. Currier one more time, I was going to throw his phone in the lake.
That's my dad's name. Stop calling me that.
Stop it.
Yeah. Well, Jeff, on this trip in France, if you land your Wels catfish, and if you hit that 500 number, how do you imagine that moment? Have you thought about this moment? I mean, that is a big number. Are you, what do you think is going to go through your mind? Or are you trying to just like, I'm not even going to think about it till the moment happens? I mean, what are you thinking?
I'm not thinking about the number 500 at all. All my friends are, and people that know me are. I'm thinking about the Wels catfish. Like, this is a fish, like I said, I've known about 30 years ago, and I've never held one. Granny pulled out a picture of her holding a dead Wels catfish at a fish market somewhere in Eastern Europe years ago. She showed it to me about 3 weeks ago. She said, "Do you recognize this?" I'm like, "Oh my God, that's right. I made you hold a Wels catfish that was on a table at a market on the Black Sea." She's like, "Yeah, you're finally going to get to hold one yourself, hopefully." And so I think that's for me. It's just going to be like my ichthyology, my scientist will come out of me. I'm going to be like, you guys are going to be like, "Currier, do this and that." And I'm just going to be staring at it and checking it out. And just, it's going to be amazing. And let me just tell you something. If the Wels catfish is not the 500, I'll be brokenhearted. But there'll be some type of red horse sucker that'll be the 500 species the next week or two. Maybe the Wels catfish turns into 546 or something. And that's okay. But boy, it would be cool if we can get it done this week. We're running out of time, but I think I'm feeling good about the next 24 hours.
Well, and one thing I've learned about traveling with you and spending a lot of time with you over the last 30 years is once you sink your teeth into something, it's pretty rare to see you move on without finding success. There's no doubt. You keep talking about your wife, Granny, who is such a rock star. Has there ever been a point when you've been putting this list together and jetting off? And a lot of times she's with you. Like, she is your partner in crime on this stuff. But has she ever gotten to the point where she's like, enough already? Like, stop with the list and stop going after this? Or is she just completely on board? Like, yeah, sounds great. Let's go.
She's totally on board. It sounds great. Let's go. She loves to travel. She is not going to make 10,000 casts for a fish. She's going to make about 50 and be like, "What's in the cooler, honey?" And that's very cool. But the only thing that she tells me to slow down on is working too much. We talked about how it's really hard to get to this point. I do work. I mean, I'm, from emails to writing my blog to editing photos to looking at my next destination to studying up. She's like, "That's, stop. Like, you're already there. You've done enough in the industry. You don't need to keep, doing this and that." And she's right. You and I were having a beer the other day, and we saw those people in the back of the boat sitting at the table reading books. And I said to you, "I'm so jealous of those people. I could never do that." And you just looked up real quick. You said, "Oh God, me neither."
She's not wired that way.
Yeah, we're not wired that way. Yeah. But hopefully you can rewire as you get older. And Granny's going to help me do that.
Yeah. Do you think that this mission, call it an obsession, call it a quest, whatever you want to call it, despite the blown out shoulders and the chronic sunburn, do you think that having this mission has kept you young?
Oh my God, absolutely kept me young. Just for this trip alone, our place in Wisconsin, we have a gym in the basement that Granny built, and I use that a lot. And before trips, I use it especially. I mean, people look at me like, really, you go to the gym? But, at my age, it's hard to keep what you got, and I make sure to do that. So I'm probably stronger than most people think. And also the fact that you're out there, you're social with people that you're doing stuff. And it keeps you young. Travel keeps you young. New things keep you young. And that's what my quest does. It brings me to new countries, new places, meet new people, and then you meet the fish. And I don't ever foresee that ending. People will probably start asking me, so what's your next goal and species? You're going to go for 600? I'm going to look them in the eye and say, why not 750?
There you go.
I still got another 25 years left of me, hopefully.
Yeah.
And why stop?
That's right. Well, that was going to be my next question. You get your Wels. Do you do the mic drop, retire, and go join the people sitting on the back of the boat reading in the shade? Or do you simply fish for joy? But, 500, then 550, then 600. Keep it going, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Looking back, Jeff, what are you most proud of? Is it the number that you've caught and recorded? Is it the travel? Is it the people you've become friends with? What are your biggest takeaways all these years later from this pursuit in this quest?
Oh, I'd say the thing I'm most proud of is that, I have people come up to me and say that I have maybe, I won't say changed their life, but had an impact on their fishing life in a very positive way. Like, I was only a trout fisherman, and now I start fishing my bluegill pond, and it's moving. And I saw carp the other day, and I caught them. It took me 2 summers, but I finally got a carp. So I'm most proud of the fact that I've helped other people with their fishing. And I say helped. I've been teaching fly fishing for 40 years, too. That's what I did when I worked in the shop back in the day. I ran the fly fishing school, and I still spend, people like, I can't believe you do those shows, Currier. It must be miserable. I love it. Put me on the casting platform out there in the fly fishing show, and there's 100 people on both sides. I love it. I won't say I love it as much as fishing. I'd rather be fishing, but when I see people watching the cast go back and forth, and they come to my booth and ask questions, and I help them, they're like, I'm having trouble with this. And then I see them next year, and they're like, hey, that helps me. I did really good with it this summer. That puts a huge smile on my face. Catching fish is great, but when you help other people catch fish is really great.
That's why everybody likes you, Jeff. You're just such a nice guy, I tell you. Well, how about some wrap-up questions? I'm going to throw a few final questions at you related and specific to your quest, to your big list. Basically things you've learned and discovered over the years while chasing this number. And you don't think about it too much. Just throw the first thing that comes out. In your opinion, most underrated fish that you can catch on a fly?
Grass carp, white amur.
There you go. Weirdest food you've ever eaten on a destination angling trip?
Fish eyeball soup isn't too good in Borneo. Definitely kicked back a few iguanas over the year, but I'd have to say the mare's milk in Mongolia was the worst thing I've ever put down my throat.
The fermented mare's milk.
Oh, good God.
Yeah.
I feel like I've got a back taste right now just thinking about it.
I might be with you on that one.
Yeah,
that's
horrible.
pretty rugged. A fish species that you've checked off the list and that you never want or need to catch again?
Oh boy, that's an interesting one. Oh, Klug, you might have stumped me a little on that one. I'm trying to think if anything ever hurt me real bad, or, I don't think there's any. I'll be honest with you. For me to have to think that long, I think that I've never been like, okay, I'm done with you.
All right.
Hopefully that answer suits.
No, that's a legitimate answer. That's good.
Yeah, good.
That's good. How about one fish species, caught or uncaught, that you are most likely to dream about at night?
Well, I have caught my Africanus permit now, but people say, have there ever been a heartbreaking loss of a fish? That's the one. I lost an Africanus before even people knew what they were, back in living on the beach at Oman with Granny. 2014, after a 45-minute fight, I lost the Africanus right there as I was surfing him up on the beach. And I had nightmares about that fish for a long time.
Probably still do.
Luckily, thanks to our buddy Nick Bowles in Dubai, he said, let's get this fixed, Currier. And, he's developed that fishery really well now. And I went right over and got a few with him since then. But yeah, that was a tough one. And Granny was right there by my side. It's a great, if you Google my name, Africanus in Oman, you're going to read the whole story. It's a good one. I lost some blood on that one.
Yeah. All right, next question. Give me one country that every fly angler should visit.
Ooh. Just one. Wow. That's a tough one. I'm going to go back to my roots, Belize.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Good answer. Favorite species under 12 inches?
Pumpkin seed sunfish.
Favorite species over 100 pounds?
Ooh. Not necessarily caught one over 100 pounds, but that get over 100 pounds, I would say Nile perch. And I just love where Nile perch fishing brings you. It's incredible places.
Only one fly pattern that you get to use for the rest of your life. What is it?
10 years ago, I would have said Parachute Adams because it's the greatest dry fly and it'll catch you, not just trout, but every river species there is. But as I'm older and I can't see 5X tippet as well anymore, just give me a clouser. Give me a chartreuse and white clouser size 6. Perfect.
Take it anywhere in the world.
Take it anywhere in the world, yeah.
How about one place you still haven't fished that is kind of at the forefront that you're obsessing about?
I think I would really like to get a fair shot at a Goliath tigerfish, which unfortunately puts me in dangerous countries, whether it's Central African Republic or in the middle of the Congo, DRC. But that would be my dream if I was able to go do that, go catch the fish and get home safely. And I would be willing to try.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It is a tough one.
The Goliath, not easy to catch on a fly. We've got buddies that have done it, but not too many of them.
No, not many.
Yeah. Well, last question I have for you, Jeff, and we'll leave our listeners with this. Imagine it's 30 years from now, right? 40 years from now, whatever it is. Nobody remembers whether you finished your species list at 500 or 550 or 750. They know you caught a lot of fish. They remember your name. But what do you hope they do remember about the way you approached fishing, travel, and life?
I would hope that people would remember, that's the guy that was always, in the forefront of not just getting us to learn to like other species of fish, but always, willing to share his knowledge and teaching other people, keep helping people. If you just learned to cast and you got pretty good at it and you got a friend that wants to get into it, get them into it. I'd like to be known as the guy that's made other people's fishing lives better.
It's a good legacy to leave.
That'd be cool.
I like it. And with that, we will leave our listeners with that thought. You and I have a evening session. It's
yes.
I think I just checked the temps. It's 103 degrees out there right now.
Beautiful.
We are going to probably have a couple cold beers, maybe a glass of chilled wine, which I'd never drink at home, but God, with this weather, it tastes pretty good. And then we're going to head back out this evening and fish until dark and see if we can get this done.
Yep. I think we got a good chance. I feel lucky tonight.
Excellent. Well, Jeff, as always, a pleasure to sit down with you. Great conversation. Thanks for sharing your knowledge and your experience and so much good information with our Waypoints listeners.
Pleasure, Klug, as always, buddy.
Well, that wraps up this episode of Waypoints. If you are dreaming about your next fly fishing adventure, be sure to visit yellowdogflyfishing.com. It's the place to explore destinations, research trips, source the right gear and flies, and stay up to date on everything happening in the world of destination angling. At its core, fly fishing is really about the journey, something we've talked about today, the places we discover, the people we meet, and the stories we bring home. And of course, the best stories almost always start with an adventure. Until next time, keep fishing, keep traveling, and remember that no one ever regretted a life of adventure.
This has been another episode of Waypoints, the podcast of fly fishing travel and adventure angling. Waypoints is produced by Brian Gregson and written by Jim Klug. Music is written and provided by bluegrass legend Woody Platt. Audio engineered by Sean McCormick. Visit yellowdogflyfishing.com for more location profiles, destination information, travel news, and the industry's best selection of flies and equipment for destination angling.